There's something in human history that once you notice it, you can't unnotice. We domesticated the dog before we domesticated any plant. Before wheat, before rice, before cows, sheep, chickens, before farming existed at all. Think about that. Back when we were still hunter-gatherers, wandering after food, not growing a single grain, we stopped, looked at a large predator, an animal perfectly capable of killing us, and decided that thing was going to sleep next to us. And it's the only animal we did that with. Every other one came later once farming was already running. The dog is the exception. The dog came first. The obvious question is simple. Why? And the answer we've always told ourselves is probably backwards. If you could pick one animal to be humanity's first partner, the wolf would be dead last on the list. It's fast, it's strong, it hunts in coordinated packs and takes down animals far bigger than itself. It has a bite that cracks bone, and it competes with us. Same food, same territory, same prey. A wolf is not a rabbit. You don't just grab a wolf and put a collar on it. And yet it was him. Of every animal on the planet, our biggest rival became the first non-human member of the family. Look at the contrast. Cows, sheep, goats, pigs, chickens. What do they all have in common? They're prey. Plant eaters, herd animals, half docile from the factory, and we domesticated every one of them later, once we already had fields, fences, and barns. The dog is none of that. The dog is a hunter, and it came first, alone, before everything. And the result of that improbable bet? Today, after us, the dog is the most successful large mammal on the planet. We took our biggest rival and turned it into our biggest partner. When exactly this happened, nobody really knows. Studies point somewhere between 15,000 and more than 30,000 years ago, and that range is still argued about. I'll be honest with you, nobody has a fixed date. But on one thing, almost everyone agrees. It was long before agriculture, in a world that was nothing but ice, hunting, and firelight. And that changes the question. It's no longer why a wolf, it's how did this start? Who took the first step? And here's where most people get it completely wrong. Because the story you were taught is backwards. Stick with me. There's something buried in the ground in Germany that changes everything, and it will break your heart. The classic version goes something like this. A clever human finds a wolf den. The parents are away. He takes a pup, small, soft, not yet afraid, and brings it home. Feeds it, raises it, and across generations he picks the tamest, breeds the most useful, and slowly shapes the animal into a dog. In that story, we're the hero. The human is the smart one, the one who tamed the beast. The wolf is raw material, a project. That hypothesis is real. It's taken seriously. There are respected scientists who back it. It's not nonsense. But it has a problem. Take a wolf pup today, raise it from a baby with all the love in the world. You know what you get at the end? A wolf. A wolf that might tolerate you but stays suspicious, independent, with instincts that don't vanish because you fed it by hand. Domestication isn't taming one animal. Domestication is changing an entire species. The body, the brain, the behavior, over thousands of years. It's not a project a clever guy starts on a Tuesday afternoon. So the story has a hole. And to see what actually happened, you have to stop looking at the human. You have to look at the fire. Come back with me. Ice Age. Some night, tens of thousands of years ago, a small human group camped, a fire burning in the middle. They hunted today, and the smell of roasting meat rises with the smoke and travels, way past the circle of light, out into the forest, across the open ground. Now step out of the camp for a second, and go into the dark. Because there's someone there. Just past the light, there are eyes. Several. A pack of wolves lying in the shadows, catching that smell. They've been following this human group for a while. Not to attack. Humans in a group, with spears and fire, are a bad target. They're here for another reason. There's food left over. Where there are humans, there are scraps. Bones, cartilage, the parts nobody wanted, things thrown away. To a wolf, that camp is a restaurant that appears out of nowhere and disappears the next day. It's worth following. But there's a price. To eat, you have to get close, and getting close to humans with fire is terrifying. And it's exactly here, in that stretch of dark between the tree line and the fire, that the entire story of your dog begins. Because not every wolf behaves the same. Picture two wolves from that pack lying side by side in the dark, staring at the same camp. The first one is the cautious one, the nervous one. Everything about him screams danger. The fire, the strange smell, the noise of these people. His body won't let him. He gets up, turns around, and leaves hungry. Tomorrow he hunts alone, like always, and maybe he gets something, and maybe he doesn't. The second one is different. He feels the fear too, but a little less, just a little, and that particular night, hunger speaks louder. He stands up and takes a step, then another. He gets closer than any wolf should ever get, and nothing happens. The humans look, they tense up, but he's no threat, he's just sniffing around the scraps, and they have other things to worry about, so they let him be. That night, the brave wolf eats. The frightened one doesn't. Now repeat that. Not once, repeat it for hundreds of generations. What happens? Every generation, the wolves that were more tolerant, calmer, the ones who could sit near a human without losing it, they ate better, they survived more, they had more pups, and they passed down the exact thing that brought them close. The courage to be friendly. See what just happened? Nobody domesticated anybody. There was no clever human raiding a den. The selection ran on its own, and the trait nature ended up choosing, without meaning to, was friendship. This is what's called the self-domestication hypothesis, and I have to be honest, it's a theory, and there are serious scientists who disagree with it. Not everyone buys it. But it's one of the strongest explanations we have, and it flips who the main character of this story really is. We didn't go out and get the dog. The dog came to us. And there's a poetry in that I can't ignore. This whole thing started because someone had the courage to take one step toward an unfamiliar fire. If this story is getting to you, take yours. Hit subscribe and come along. The fire here stays lit every week, and there's always room. It's a beautiful story, but if you think about it coldly, it's still a transaction. Look at it. The wolf comes close because he wants food. The human tolerates the wolf because he barks when a predator shows up, because he helps track prey, because he keeps the night warmer. Both sides are getting something. It's a trade, it's useful, nothing special. And that's exactly how scientists explained this relationship for a long time. Utility. The dog is a living tool, an alarm, a hunting assistant, a furry heater. We kept him around because he was good for something. And here lives the hardest question in this whole story, one that seems impossible to answer. At what point did that partnership become love? Because that affection, the bond, the dog lying on your feet while you watch TV, doesn't fossilize. You can't excavate tenderness. There's no bone for feelings. You can dig up a dog skeleton at an ancient site, and it won't tell you whether that animal was loved or whether it was just a tool that slept outside. Unless something very specific happens. Unless we find a dog that was useless, and they took care of it anyway. And that is exactly what was buried, waiting under the ground in Germany. The year is 1914, Germany. Some quarry workers are digging at Oberkassel near Bonn when they hit bones. What they found was a grave, and an incredibly old one, around 14,200 years, still the Ice Age. Inside, two human beings, a man around 40, a woman in her 20s, buried together with care. Beside them, objects, a worked bone pin, a piece of elk antler carved into the shape of an elk's head, a red deer tooth, handmade things, things that mattered to somebody. The grave was dusted with red rock powder and covered with basalt blocks so that nobody ever would disturb it. This isn't a body dumped in a hole. This is a burial. It's ceremony. It's respect. It's people saying goodbye. And there was one more thing in there. Among the bones, next to the man and the woman, there was a jawbone that for decades nobody understood. They assumed it was a wolf. They filed it away in museum storage with the rest. And there it sat. Except it wasn't a wolf. It was a dog, a puppy, about 7 months old, and it was buried right there with the two humans. Not outside, not off in a corner, with them. It is the oldest grave we know of where a human and a dog were buried together. But that alone still doesn't prove love. You could bury a treasured tool, a valuable possession, a symbol. The real proof wasn't in the fact that the puppy was there. It was in his teeth. Decades later, a researcher named Luke Janssens went back to re-examine those bones, and he had a rare advantage. Besides being an archaeologist, he's a veterinarian. He looked at those teeth with the eyes of someone who spends his days treating sick dogs. And he saw what nobody had seen. That puppy's teeth had marks, lines in the enamel, the kind that form when an animal goes through a severe illness while its teeth are still growing. And it wasn't one line, it was 3, at 19 weeks, at 21, and at 23. What he had has a name, distemper, a virus that attacks the respiratory system, the gut, and the nervous system. It causes fever, vomiting, seizures. It still kills dogs today, even with vaccines, even with vets. And that puppy caught it in the Ice Age, 3 times, between 4 and 5 months old. Each bout runs about 3 weeks, and the mortality is brutal. On its own, a puppy in that condition does not survive. And if you think I'm exaggerating, there's a number that settles it. A study examined the skulls of 544 adult wild dogs and wolves, held in museum collections around the world, looking for exactly that enamel mark, the signature of an animal that caught distemper as a pup and lived. Guess how many had it? None. 0 out of 544. Because in nature, it doesn't happen. The disease knocks you down, and the world outside doesn't wait. Nobody brings you water. Nobody keeps you warm. But the Oberkassel puppy had the mark. 3 times. He came through all 3 bouts. And the bones say more. He had arthritis. Extremely rare in a dog that young. The likely explanation is painful to picture. The seizures made him fall uncontrolled again and again, and his little body kept getting hurt. He was convulsing, and someone was right there holding him. There's only one explanation for how he survived. Someone took care of him. Someone kept that puppy warm while he shook with fever. Someone put water in his mouth when he was too weak to stand. Someone cleaned up the vomit, the mess, for weeks in the Ice Age, in a world where every calorie and every minute was life or death. And here's the part that really gets me. Through all those months of illness, that puppy had no use whatsoever. He couldn't hunt. He couldn't guard, track, or warn anyone. In the cold math of survival, he was dead weight. He ate, he cost time, and he gave nothing back. Taking care of him had no practical benefit at all. And they took care of him anyway, for weeks. This is where the story of the dog stops being about utility. You don't spend sleepless nights cleaning up after a sick animal because of a cost-benefit calculation. You do that for one reason. Because you love that animal. And when he died, at 7 months old, still a puppy, they didn't leave him behind like a broken tool. They put him inside the grave, next to the man, next to the woman, next to the objects that mattered, under the red dust and the stones nobody was ever supposed to move. Like by family. And there's one last detail, maybe the quietest of them all. Among the offerings, there was a tooth, a single tooth. And it wasn't the puppy's, it was smaller, more worn, older. It belonged to another dog, a second dog who had already gone before. Someone kept a small piece of him and placed it in the grave with everything else. We know nothing about that dog, but we know this. 14,000 years ago, somebody decided that the memory of that animal deserved to cross into death with them. So, in the end, the story we've been telling was backwards in every possible way. We didn't go out and get the wolf. He came toward our fire, one step at a time, and nature kept rewarding generation after generation the exact thing we love most about him today, the courage to come close. And the bond wasn't born out of usefulness, out of hunting, out of work, or at least it didn't stop there. Because the oldest thing we can actually prove about this relationship isn't a dog hunting. It's a sick, useless puppy being cared for by people who had nothing to gain from it. 14,000 years ago, in a world of ice and hunger, 2 human beings spent weeks looking after a little animal that was nothing but trouble, and when he died, they couldn't bring themselves to leave him behind. If you have a dog, he's probably around right now, maybe asleep near you, doing absolutely nothing useful. And here's the thing. 14,000 years ago, somebody already felt exactly what you feel for him. Nothing has changed. The fire stays lit here every week. Just show up. See you next time.